this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 1 of the So Free Art podcast, which you can find at sofreeart.com. And this is a little podcast I do each week about art and things. And it's normally going to be covering things like art tools, art tips, drawing exercises, various experiences of like life drawing class and things like that. So I thought for the first episode I would look at my recommended art tools, but specifically paper. And then the next episode I would look at pencils, and then the next episode after that I will look at erasers, and the episode after that I'll look at various like bits and bobs that I like to use for pencils and stuff. So this episode is all going to be about paper, and what I'm going to do is I'll put loads of links in the show notes, so if there's any of these tools you'd like to know more about, if you go into the show notes there will be links there. And what I do think is important is like everyone is different, so like try every single tool that you can get your hands on, and even try the ones that you don't think you're going to like, because I've noticed sometimes I'll look at something and think I don't want to use that, and then I'll use it and I'll end up using it all the time because I really like it. And there's other times that there's a tool I look at and I think, I can't wait to use that, and when you use it just doesn't feel right. And that's the main thing, it's how it feels, which is quite hard to explain. But especially with, say, a pencil and paper, like some of the pencils, they seem to sort of glide across the paper, and then some of the leads, they seem to be sticky. So again, you might prefer a sticky lead for gesture drawings, but you might prefer a smooth one, so it's always worth trying different things. But these are just my personal favourite things. And I thought for this first episode I would look at paper. As I said, it is really amazing how different paper can change the look and feel of a drawing. I'll just go over like some sizes, because if I talk about sizes just so you know what they are, where in the UK we mainly talk about sizes as like A3, A4, A5 and A6, and A3 is 11.7 by 16.5 inches. A4 is basically 8 by 12. A5 is 6 by 8 inches, and A6 is 4 by 6 inches. So if I start with the types of paper that I like for a realistic pencil drawing, and I tried lots and lots of different types of paper when I first started drawing, and this is using graphite pencils, so just regular pencils, either mechanical or like the normal wooden ones. And the paper that I found the best was actually Bristol board, which is a very thick paper. But I was actually recommended Bristol board paper via the book How to Draw Lifelike Portraits from Photographs by Lee Hammond. I've done a review of that book on the website. I'll put a link in the show notes. But that book was probably the book that transformed my ability to do realistic pencil drawings the most. That book was quite amazing actually, and she spoke about Bristol boards in there, so I went and purchased quite a lot of different types, and the one I settled on after much trial and error was the Winsor & Newton Extra Smooth Surface Drawing Pad. And this Bristol board is super smooth, and like the pencils and tortillons are these little paper blending things, but the tortillons and the paper, they just slide across the surface so smoothly. Like it feels really beautiful, and it always produces a lovely smooth finish. And the other reason that I really like this paper is because it's pure white, whereas some of the other Bristol boards were like that creamy colour. I prefer a white one, a pure white, because it means when you're doing the highlights, they really pop. Like the lights really pop a lot more when you've got the white paper. But I wouldn't use this paper to sketch on, not only because I don't like the way the sketches look on it, but also because it's not the cheapest paper. It's currently on Amazon for £6.97 for the A4 size, and that's for 20 sheets. So it works out about 40p per sheet, which isn't a lot of money, but if you were sketching on it, it would soon add up. So I prefer to use sketchbooks for that because they're much cheaper. But for a realistic pencil drawing, I think it's actually quite good value, especially with the quality. The other reason I wouldn't use it for sketching is because it requires a lot of time to work with. I find you have to be slow and gentle with this paper, whereas sketching I find you need to be quick and almost like dirty, and this paper would turn a nose up at you if you started doing that to her, I think. So this one's definitely good for realistic pencil drawings and blending, if you want a nice smooth blend. And it's worth noting this paper is actually 100% acid free and 100% wood free, which is pretty cool. The other type of paper I use is printer paper, and I use this one because it's super cheap, you can pick it up anywhere, and I use it for gesture drawings. And gesture drawing is where you have a limited amount of time, and it's normally something, it could be as little as say 15 seconds all the way up to say 5 to 10 minutes. Gesture drawings are not really longer than 10 minutes, because after that you're getting more to a proper drawing. But with gesture drawings, you really want to be quick and have quick, flowy movements. But you're also not really worried about producing works of art. So in that regard, it doesn't matter too much about the paper. So I'm using a website called Croquet Cafe, which is a YouTube channel, and they basically set up a life drawing class, but on YouTube. So I'm finding it really good to practice my figure drawings with that. And for that, I use A4 printer paper. A4 printer paper is actually good for gesture drawings and things with fast movement. Then one of my personal favourite things is an A6 Winsor & Newton sketchbook. And Winsor & Newton have got a couple of A6 sketchbooks. These are quite small. And you've got one which has a pure white paper, and there's another one which has got the creamy paper, and I prefer the one that's got the smooth white paper, and it's called a heavyweight Wire O Winsor & Newton A6 sketchbook. I'll put a link in the show notes. What I really like about this paper is it's actually quite cheap, really. It's 50 sheets, so you get a lot of paper there, and it's 170 GSM, which means it's quite thick. It's getting close to Bristol board quality, and I use this for doing my mini drawings, which are basically tiny little 2-inch squared realistic pencil drawings, I guess, but they're really small, so you're more practicing. This paper is also really good for coloured pencils. But there's a nice smooth texture to it, and it allows for some really nice blending. This little A6 book comes in both spiral and glue-bound versions. I always go for the spiral one, as I feel more confident to throw the book around like that, because when the ones with the glued edges, the spiral bound means you've got the little black spiral thing, so the paper wraps right around to the back. And if it's glued, it's the edge. It's like a magazine. Then it's each page is sort of connected to each other. And with that, I don't like that, because I find you can't really bend it back properly, and half the time pages start ripping out. Whereas with the spiral one, you can really throw the book around without fear of ripping any of the pages. And these are really quite cheap, actually, considering the quality. I can get them for £2.50 in the range, and they're £3.50 on Amazon, so they're not that expensive really, and because they're so small, you can stick them in your bag and like take them to work, and that's how you can always have a sketchbook with you. So I really like these. I think that's probably my most used sketchbook. Although I will say I've recently started buying tiny, I think they're even smaller than that, little sketchbooks in my local art shop, and they're only 80p, and they come with about 20 pages, but they're even smaller and thinner, so I get those because I like sticking those in my bag, and then I can also put them in my pocket. But I can't find those. I'll have a look to see if I can find one of those on Amazon, and if I can, I will put that in the show notes as well. I know they sell them in the range for 70p, so I'll have a look on there as well. And actually the ones in the range are probably a little bit better because they come with a light blue, dark blue, lilac, pink. You can get all different coloured covers, which I think is quite nice. Whereas the Winsor & Newton ones have always got black covers, which it gets a bit boring in the end. So, and then I also like to have A5 and A4 sketchbooks. A5 I find is a nice size for doing just general sketching. So if I'm like copying a drawing or something from a magazine, I'll normally do that on an A5 sketchbook. And for me personally, I don't really care what sketchbook I get in A5, because with that one, as long as it's like that sketchbook paper, you know, that like rough stuff, I think it's about 100 GSM. As long as it's like that rough sketchy paper, I like that for sketching. And so I just pick up any A5 books from anywhere. But in Wilkinson's, which is a local shop, they actually have these A5 black sketchbooks from, I think it's Reeves, and they're only like £2, and they're really good quality with a hard cover. I should also say that the little A6 Winsor & Newton sketchbooks have got a hardcover as well, which I really like. Whereas the other little 75p ones have got more of a cardboard cover, but it doesn't matter too much. And then I also like, so that's the A5 paper. I also like A4 sketchbooks, and that's normally what I take to life drawing class, because I find A4 is a nice size to be able to put it in a bag, and you can sort of go to life drawing class and just do like your quick sketching and long pose sketches on that. But it's funny because at the last life drawing class, one of the ladies said to me, she said, "You're always working on A4." And like I hadn't really thought about it, but I do. So I said to her, next time I'm going to come with a bigger pad of paper, and under the bed I have got a big A3 sketchbook, so I'm going to take that to life drawing class next week, and I'll see what that feels like, because I normally stick to A4, but it might be quite fun actually to try bigger paper. I know A3 is really good for gesture drawings, because if there's a website called quickposes.com, which I always used to do my gestures with, but recently I've been using Croquet Cafe. When you're doing gesture drawings, it's really good to use big sheets of paper, because then you can just go really crazy with your lines and like just over exaggerate everything, and you can use your whole arm to do your gesture. Whereas if the smaller the paper gets, the more you're having to like tighten up, I guess. So with gesture drawings, it is good to go with bigger paper. What I found good is A3 printer paper, because it's cheap. It's got a nice smooth surface, so the pencil glides across it with gesture drawings, and it's just a really good piece of paper. The only thing with that is you end up with like hundreds of sheets of paper everywhere. Because like in my cupboard, I must have hundreds and hundreds of these A3 sheets of paper, and I don't know what to do with them, because I don't really want to throw them away, but then I don't want to keep them either. So I don't really know. That's one of the advantages actually of digital, like doing digital, because I used to always do my gestures on sheets of paper with quick poses, but when I started doing digital last year, I ended up doing all my quick poses, all my gesture drawings on the computer, and it's only since I started using Croquet Cafe that I've gone back to using the paper. So that's my favourite paper for realistic pencil drawings and sketching. And then next week I'll be looking at my favourite pencils, again for sketching and realistic pencil drawings. So that's actually going to be quite good because I'll be able to talk a bit more about how those pencils behave on these different types of paper, because it's quite strange, and that shocked me at first, just how different the same pencil could feel on different types of paper, which is quite fascinating. It's quite fun actually trying them all out. And so that'll be next week. It'll be all about pencils. You can find the show notes and everything at sofreeart.com, which basically links back to the main website of sophielawson.com. You can find me online on Instagram at sophie.lawson, and I'm on Twitter at sophielawsonart. And what I'm going to do is, each week I'm going to have a little quote. It's just a little inspirational quote from artists and people that I find inspiring. So I'm going to leave you with this week's quote, which is a quote from Joseph Campbell, who, if you look him up on YouTube, he's just amazing. He was a philosopher. The way he speaks and talks about like myths and stuff, it's absolutely, I would say, like mesmerising, to be honest. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from Joseph Campbell, and it is, "We must let go of the life we have planned so as to accept the one that is waiting for us." Joseph Campbell.